After hosting my in-laws for a week, my husband told me they thought I talked too much at dinner and make everything about myself. I had spent every day cooking, planning activities, and cleaning after them. I asked him what he said in response. He shrugged and said, "They're just being honest." That night, I called a travel agent. By morning, I had a ticket out and a week-long reservation at a beach resort. When they woke up, the house was quiet, except for the note I left on the fridge. "Be honest with yourselves. You never deserved me." I guess you could say I hit my limit. I didn't scream. I didn't slam doors. I just left.
Here's what happened.
I live just outside Savannah, Georgia, in a quiet neighborhood where you can still hear crickets at night. My husband, Rick, and I have been married 6 years. No kids, just 2 old rescue dogs that follow me everywhere. We have a good life, or so I thought. When Rick told me his parents wanted to stay with us for a full week, I wasn't thrilled. Marcia and Bob are not easy people. Marcia criticizes everything without even realizing it. Your clothes, your cooking, your house. Bob is the kind of guy who thinks silence makes him better than everyone. But they're Rick's family. So I smiled and said, "Of course." I started cleaning the house a full week before they came. Top to bottom. I scrubbed grout on my hands and knees. I bought new towels for the guest bathroom. I filled the fridge with the foods they liked because Marcia is picky, and even rearranged the pantry to make snacks easier for Bob to find. The day they showed up, I was sweating through my blouse from running around, trying to make everything perfect. They barely said thank you. They rolled in with 5 suitcases for a 7-day stay and dropped them right in the living room. Right away, Marcia made a comment about how small our kitchen was compared to Rick's sister's place in Pittsburgh. That was just the start. Every day, I cooked 3 full meals. Hot breakfasts. Nice lunches. Big homemade dinners. I made chicken pot pie from scratch because Bob hates frozen pie crust. I baked a lemon cake because Marcia said she liked something sweet after dinner. I also planned activities. I booked a riverboat tour because Marcia saw it on a brochure at the airport. I organized a full beach day at Tybee Island. I even called a few local museums to ask about handicap accessibility because Bob's got bad knees. I didn't want there to be one single thing they could complain about. And at night, we sat down at the dinner table. I kept the conversations going. I asked them about their friends back home, about their old trips. I even asked about Rick's childhood stories I already heard a dozen times. I thought that's what you're supposed to do when you're a good host. Make guests feel welcome. The night before they were set to leave, Rick and I were cleaning up after dinner. I was still wearing my apron, hands in soapy water, scrubbing pans that were too heavy for Marcia to lift. Rick leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me work. Then he said real easy, like he was talking about the weather, "Just so you know, my parents think you talk too much at dinner. They said you always make it about yourself." I stopped scrubbing. My back was aching. My fingers were pruny from the water. My brain tried to catch up to what he said. "What?" I said, turning around. "They're just being honest," he said with a shrug. "It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. Not a big deal that after bending over backward for a week, all they could say was that I talked too much. Not a big deal that he didn't defend me. I stood there for a minute. I didn't say anything. I finished the dishes, dried my hands, and went upstairs. I sat down on the edge of our bed and stared at the floor. I thought about every time I had swallowed my pride that week. Every time I smiled through an insult. Every time I bent over backwards and got slapped in the face for it. And then I opened my laptop. I booked a one-way flight to Florida. A beachfront resort. Private room. Spa package. Room service. The works. Paid for it myself. Didn't use a dime from our joint account. I didn't even think twice. I packed a small suitcase, sundresses, a couple of swimsuits, sandals, my favorite book, and my sunglasses. I set an alarm for 5 a.m. Before I went to sleep, I wrote a note on a piece of paper and stuck it on the fridge. It said, "Be honest with yourselves. You never deserved me." At dawn, I slipped out of the house.
No noise. No lights.
No breakfast ready on the table. I left my phone off for the first 2 days. I didn't want to hear the excuses. I didn't want to hear the fake apologies. I spent that morning lying by the pool, drinking coffee in the sun, feeling my muscles unclench for the first time in years. I don't know what Rick told them. I don't know if they packed up their own bags or waited for someone else to do it for them. All I know is, for once, I'm living for myself. And I'm not sorry. About 3 days into my trip, I finally turned my phone back on. The messages came in all at once. First, a few from Rick. Where are you? You're acting crazy. You embarrass me in front of my parents. Then a longer one. They think you're unstable now. You just left out of nowhere. They're worried about me being married to someone so emotional. I read those messages sitting on my balcony, staring out at the ocean. The anger hit slow but deep, like a knife sinking in. I didn't reply. A day later, I got a call from my best friend, Mandy. She said Rick had been blowing up her phone too, trying to figure out where I was. He even called my sister. He's telling people you abandoned him, she said. Like, abandoned? I laughed out loud. I couldn't help it. I abandoned him? After everything? Mandy was furious. You need to come back and get your stuff, she said. He's already talking about changing the locks. That's when it hit me. Rick wasn't just mad. He was trying to make me the villain. I called a lawyer that same afternoon. Found a woman named Janine who specialized in divorce cases. She answered my call herself. No assistant, no waiting. Her voice was calm, firm. You're not going back to that house until you have a separation agreement in place, she said. You deserve better protection than that. It was the first time in weeks someone talked to me like I mattered. Over the next 2 days, I worked with Janine to set up the paperwork. Rick still didn't know where I was. I stayed at the resort, ordered room service, took long walks on the beach. I didn't tell a soul where I was. Then the twist I didn't see coming hit me. Mandy called again, voice tight and low. You're not gonna believe this, she said. Rick's parents are still at your house. What? I almost dropped my phone. They were supposed to leave days ago, right? They're still there. Rick's been waiting for you to come back, so you can clean up after them. I sat there, stunned. He wasn't even cleaning up after his own parents. He just left them there, living in my house, like I was gonna come crawling back and pick up where I left off. It was so clear now. Rick never wanted a wife. He wanted a maid. He wanted a hostess. He wanted someone who would make him look good in front of his family. The marriage was already over. It had been for a long time. I thought Rick's laziness was the end of it. It wasn't. The next day, I got a thick envelope delivered to the resort's front desk. No return address. Just my name written in Rick's ugly, rushed handwriting. Inside, there was a handwritten letter. 4 full pages. The first page was him begging me to come home. The second page was him blaming me for everything. You're too sensitive. You overreacted. You humiliated me. The third page got uglier. He said he was thinking about suing me for emotional distress.
Suing me?
For having the nerve to leave after he stood there and let his parents tear me apart. And the fourth page? That was the real kicker. It was a list of everything he said I had failed at during the marriage.
Cooking.
Cleaning. Making a good impression on his family. Being quieter at social events. He even wrote that I didn't try hard enough to lose weight after we got married. I sat there in my hotel room, the sound of the ocean outside, reading this list like it was a court indictment. Every single bullet point was a gut punch. Not one word about love. Not one word about the memories we had built. It was like our entire marriage was some job I was failing at. The longer I stared at the letter, the colder I felt inside. I wasn't going back. There was no fixing it. There was nothing to fix. This man didn't miss me. He missed what I did for him. I called Janine and told her I wanted to move forward with divorce papers immediately. She asked if I wanted to try to negotiate, to see if Rick would be civil. I said no. I wanted it served cold. No warning. No second chances. And here's the next twist. When Janine pulled up the deed for our house, she found something I didn't know. Only my name was on it. Because when Rick and I bought the house, my credit was way better than his. I paid the down payment. I handled the mortgage. I signed all the papers. Legally, that house was mine. Rick had no right to it. Not a single room. Not a single blade of grass. He wasn't trying to lock me out. He was squatting in my house. Janine told me exactly what to do. File an emergency motion to regain possession. Get the sheriff's department to post a notice. Evict Rick and his parents if they refuse to leave. I could have cried from relief. But I didn't. I smiled for the first time in days. This wasn't just going to be a clean break. This was going to be a lesson. The morning after filing the emergency motion, I got the call. The papers were served. Rick and his parents had 72 hours to get out. I didn't wait the full 3 days. I showed up the next evening, paperwork in my hand, a sheriff standing beside me. When Rick opened the door, he looked like hell. Hair a mess, dark circles under his eyes. Behind him, I could see Bob sitting on the couch, drinking a beer. Marcia curled up in a blanket, like she owned the place. Rick's face dropped when he saw the sheriff. "This is MY House," he yelled. His voice cracked in a way that almost made me laugh. The sheriff stayed calm.
No, sir.
Legally, it's hers. You have 20 minutes to gather your things. The next 20 minutes were pure chaos. Marcia was crying, carrying trash bags full of clothes. Bob kept muttering under his breath, calling me names. Rick begged me quietly, over and over. "You don't have to do this. You're blowing everything up. Please, just be reasonable." I didn't say a word. Not one. I watched them scramble. Watched them drag their suitcases out onto the lawn. Watched Bob trip over a sprinkler head. Watched Marcia drop her fancy purse in the mud. Watched Rick realize he had no idea where he was going next. As they loaded up their car, Rick ran back to me one last time. "You're going to regret this," he said. His voice was shaking. His hands were shaking. Maybe I would regret some parts of it. Maybe I already did. But I wasn't going back. I waited until they drove off, their bumper dragging low under the weight of all their junk. Then I stepped into my house. It smelled like stale beer and cheap takeout. The kitchen was filthy. Dirty dishes piled in the sink. Trash overflowing onto the floor. It would take days to clean. I didn't care. It was mine again. Later that night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine. The dogs at my feet, staring up at the stars. For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel it, the loss. The anger. The relief. I wasn't perfect in all of this. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I tried too hard to please people who would never be happy. Maybe I let myself stay with a man who stopped loving me long before I realized it. But at the end of the day, I chose myself. I chose to walk away from people who made me feel small. And I chose to believe I deserved better. Because the truth is, being alone isn't the worst thing in the world. Staying with people who make you feel invisible? That's the real prison.